There's a strip of screen at the bottom of your Windows computer that you have been using for decades without thinking about it. You click it to launch apps, you use it to switch between open windows, you type into it when you need to find something. It is the taskbar, and it has been there in some form since Windows 95. For 30 years, it has had one job: to help you get to your own stuff as fast as possible. In the last 7 days, Microsoft confirmed what it has been planning to do to that strip of screen. And once you understand what is actually being built, what it means for the experience of using your own computer, and what has already quietly arrived on your machine right now in June 2026, you will understand why this is the moment that Copilot's relationship with Windows stopped being a feature and started being something else entirely. Let me walk you through what is happening, not in vague technology language, not in press release framing, in plain language, piece by piece, with the dates and the documentation, because everything I'm about to tell you is real, current, and confirmed this week. On May 27, 2026, Windows Latest and Windows Central both reported on an internal Microsoft document that had surfaced. It was described as an internal ebook, a strategic planning document laying out Microsoft's vision for how Copilot will integrate with Windows 11 going forward. Buried in the footnotes of that document was a sentence that confirmed what insider testers had been seeing for months. It said these capabilities are not yet generally available and are expected to come mid-2026. The capability in question is called Ask Copilot. And Ask Copilot is not another button in a menu somewhere. Ask Copilot is the replacement for the Windows Taskbar search box. The search box you have used every time you needed to find a file, launch an application, or look something up on your own machine. Microsoft is replacing it with a dynamic Copilot chat box, a persistent text field sitting in the center of your taskbar, connected directly to Microsoft's AI infrastructure that stays there whether you are using it or not. That is what is coming to Windows 11 this summer. And there is more. At the same time that Ask Copilot was confirmed for the taskbar, Microsoft was also rolling out, through a phased update in May 2026, a new feature for the Copilot application itself. The feature is a docked sidebar mode. Copilot can now be pinned to the left or right edge of your desktop, and when you do that, Windows automatically resizes every open application to make room for it. A panel approximately 300 to 500 pixels wide carves itself into your screen. Every window you have open shifts over. Your workspace shrinks to accommodate Microsoft's AI assistant, whether you're using it or not at that moment. Take a second with that. Windows automatically resizes your work to make room for Copilot. The application you were writing in, the spreadsheet you were editing, the video you were watching, all of them shrink to the available space that remains after Copilot has claimed its territory on your screen. On a 1080p monitor, a 400 pixel wide sidebar consumes between 15 and 20% of your total screen width. Now, let me tell you something that makes both of these developments significantly more important than they would be on their own. Microsoft is doing these things right now, in June 2026, at exactly the same time it has been publicly promising to do the opposite. Go back to March 20th, 2026. That is when Pavan Davuluri, the president of Windows and Devices at Microsoft, published a blog post that was widely covered as a turning point. The title was Our Commitment to Windows Quality. The content was an acknowledgement, stated carefully in corporate language but unmistakable in its meaning, that Microsoft had pushed Copilot too aggressively into Windows 11. The post promised to reduce unnecessary Copilot entry points. It named specific apps, the snipping tool, the Photos app, Notepad, the Widgets panel, where Copilot buttons would be removed. It promised a more intentional approach. It promised that AI would be integrated only where it was genuinely useful, not everywhere that Microsoft's engineering teams could technically put it. The tech press covered it as a genuine retreat. Users who had been calling Windows 11 Microslop for months treated it as a signal that the backlash had finally landed. Copilot was coming down. The buttons were being removed. Microsoft had heard the feedback. And then, within 6 weeks of that post, Microsoft tested and began rolling out a docked Copilot sidebar that claims a permanent chunk of your desktop. And within 10 weeks, Microsoft confirmed that Copilot is replacing the taskbar search box this summer. This is the contradiction that defines Microsoft's relationship with Copilot in 2026. The company simultaneously removes Copilot from Notepad with one hand and installs it permanently in the taskbar with the other. It takes the buttons out of the snipping tool while building a docked sidebar that cannot be accidentally dismissed. It promises to reduce Copilot's footprint while preparing to embed Copilot into the one piece of Windows interface that every single Windows user interacts with every single day, whether they want AI or not. To understand what Microsoft is actually doing here, you have to understand the strategic logic underneath the contradiction. Because Microsoft is not confused. They are not making mistakes. They are executing a specific plan. And the plan becomes visible when you look at what they removed and what they kept. What they removed were the scattered, obviously annoying Copilot buttons. The the ones that appeared uninvited in apps where they had no business being. The Ask Copilot button in the snipping tool, an application people open when they want to take a screenshot, not talk to an AI. The Copilot logo in the corner of Notepad, an application that has existed since 1983 and whose entire value proposition is that it gets out of your way. These removals were real. They were the right decision. And they were also strategically calculated because removing the buttons that nobody used and nobody wanted gave Microsoft credibility, created positive coverage, and bought goodwill that it is now spending on a much larger and more consequential move. The move is this. Instead of scattering Copilot across individual apps where users could ignore it or work around it, Microsoft is embedding Copilot into the operating system, shell itself, into the taskbar, into the core interface layer that sits beneath every application, every window, every piece of work you do on your computer. You cannot uninstall the taskbar. You cannot remove the search box the way you can remove a button from Notepad. The taskbar is Windows. And Microsoft is making Copilot part of the taskbar. The internal document that Windows Latest and Windows Central reported on described Ask Copilot in terms that make this ambition explicit. Microsoft's own framing describes the feature as bringing Microsoft 365 Copilot and AI agents directly into the taskbar and start menu through the new Composer experience. This means faster action, less context switching, an AI that feels like a natural part of Windows. That last phrase is the one that matters most. AI that feels like a natural part of Windows, not a feature you choose, not an application you install. A natural part of Windows, the same way the taskbar is a natural part of Windows, the same way the Start button is a natural part of Windows. Something that is simply there, that you did not decide to have, that you cannot remove, because it is not separate from the thing you are using. The document also confirmed the rollout strategy. The initial deployment targets enterprise users, a group that Microsoft calls frontier firms in its internal documentation, meaning organizations running Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 licenses. Enterprise first, then business and education tiers, then eventually consumer users who subscribe to Microsoft 365 personal or family. The phased approach gives Microsoft time to collect telemetry and refine the feature before the general availability rollout. And what that means, translated out of product management language, is that the data about how you use Ask Copilot, the queries you type, the files you ask it to find, the tasks you ask it to perform, flows back to Microsoft servers during the enterprise phase and informs how the feature develops before it reaches every Windows 11 machine on Earth. Now let us look at the docked sidebar separately, because it is happening right now, not in mid-2026, and what it does to your screen is worth understanding in precise terms. The docked Copilot sidebar was first teased in Windows Insider builds in early 2026. In May 2026, it began rolling out through a phased Windows update. The feature gives Copilot 4 layout states. The standard app view, which is what Copilot looks like today. A picture-in-picture mode, a left dock mode, where Copilot pins to the left edge of your screen, and a right dock mode, where it pins to the right. When you activate either dock mode, Windows performs what the documentation describes as an animated resize of all open windows, sliding them into the adjusted work area. The sidebar occupies approximately 300 pixels in its default configuration, expandable to 500 pixels. On a 1920 by 1080 display, 300 pixels is 15.6% of your screen width. 500 pixels is 26%. If you work with multiple windows open simultaneously, the sidebar does not just take space from one of them, it compresses all of them. Your email client, your document editor, your browser, your communication tool. Every window that was previously sized to your full desktop is now smaller because Copilot has decided it needs room. TechRadar's coverage of this feature described it as handing Microsoft's AI assistant more ammo. The headline noted that Microsoft had promised to scale back on AI visibility, but Copilot was now back to its original and invasive sidebar design. TechPowerUp's coverage put it plainly. Microsoft is still experimenting with how to integrate its Copilot AI into Windows 11, and the company seems determined to make its AI companion a primary feature on the desktop. Microsoft's own productivity data from 2025 tells you something important about who this feature is actually for. According to data from Microsoft's own internal productivity survey, only 34% of Windows users engage with Copilot at least once per month in 2025. Not daily users, monthly users. 34%. For the remaining 66%, Copilot is something they have either actively avoided, occasionally accidentally triggered, or simply ignored. For those users, the docked sidebar is a panel that consumes between 15 and 26% of their screen and does nothing for them. It just sits there, taking space, the way a billboard takes space on a road you did not ask to have it built on. The Windows Forums community, which has been tracking the sidebar rollout, noted something that captures the fundamental tension in Microsoft's approach. This is the same design Microsoft tried in 2024, abandoned, and is now bringing back. In 2024, Copilot launched as a sidebar application. Users complained. Microsoft converted it to a standalone floating window, which users complained about less, but still mostly ignored. Now Microsoft has returned to the sidebar design, with the addition of the docking feature that makes it permanent rather than temporary. The cycle is not accidental. Microsoft keeps returning to the sidebar because a sidebar that claims persistent screen territory is visible in a way that an application sitting in the taskbar is not. Visibility is the whole point. If users are not using Copilot voluntarily, making it visually unavoidable is the mechanism for changing that. But there is a harder question underneath the visibility strategy, and it is the one that the taskbar integration raises most directly. Every time you type something into the Ask Copilot box in the taskbar, where does that query go? The current Windows 11 taskbar search box already sends data to Microsoft. Searches from the taskbar have historically been routed through Bing, Microsoft's search engine, and the behavioral data generated by those searches contributes to your Microsoft advertising profile. This is documented and has been criticized by privacy advocates for years. What Ask Copilot adds to that existing data flow is qualitatively different because what you type into a Copilot interface is not just a search query, it is a prompt. Prompts contain context, intent, and meaning in a way that simple keyword searches do not. When you type Windows next to a document about medical symptoms and ask Copilot to summarize it, that interaction tells Microsoft not just that you searched for the symptoms, but that you have a document about them, that you were looking at it at a specific time, and that you wanted a summary of specific content. When you ask Copilot to help you draft a reply to an email, you are giving the AI access to the content of that email in order to assist with the reply. When you ask Copilot to find a file you worked on last Tuesday, you are giving the AI a description of your work pattern. Every prompt to Copilot is a window into what you are doing, when you are doing it, and why. Microsoft's official position is that enterprise Copilot interactions are governed by tenant-level data protection, meaning business queries stay within the organization's Microsoft 365 environment and are not used to train external AI models. For consumer users, the data handling is more complex. The internal document confirmed that Ask Copilot on the taskbar is initially rolling out to enterprise users, but consumer availability is described as coming later, likely tied to Microsoft 365 personal and family subscriptions. When it reaches consumers, the data handling framework that applies to their prompts will be the Consumer Copilot Privacy Policy, which is different from and less protective than the enterprise framework. Microsoft's privacy documentation states that consumer Copilot interactions may be used to improve Microsoft products. That phrase, improve Microsoft products, is the standard language that technology companies use to describe using your behavioral data to train AI models and refine their systems. It does not mean your prompt is read by a human. It means your prompt, along with millions of others, informs how the AI develops. The taskbar is the most used interface element in Windows. Embedding a conversational AI prompt box in the taskbar and then using the resulting interaction data to improve Microsoft products means that the most intimate, contextual, and revealing interactions users have with their operating system become part of Microsoft's AI training pipeline. There is also the question of what Ask Copilot does when you give it access to local files. The feature, as documented by Windows News and Windows Latest, includes the ability to search local files from the taskbar interface and to ask Copilot for summaries of files inside File Explorer without opening those files. Copilot reads the content of the file and returns a summary. This is a genuinely useful capability. It is also a capability that requires the AI system to access and process the content of your local documents. Documents that may include financial records, personal correspondence, medical information, legal documents, and anything else you have stored on your own computer. Microsoft's engineering teams have confirmed that Ask Copilot uses a hybrid cloud and on-device processing model. Some processing happens locally. Some happens on Microsoft servers. The division of what goes where depends on the specific request and the hardware capabilities of the device. On Copilot Plus PCs with dedicated neural processing units, more processing can happen locally. On standard Windows 11 machines, more of the computational work happens in the cloud. For users who do not have Copilot Plus hardware, which is the majority of the billion Windows 11 devices currently in use, local file summaries and context-aware queries will involve that content being processed on Microsoft servers. Now here is the timeline of everything that has happened with Copilot and the Windows taskbar in the last 3 years, because seeing it laid out in sequence reveals a pattern that the week-by-week coverage tends to obscure. September 2023. Microsoft launches Copilot in Windows 11 as a dedicated sidebar launched from a taskbar button. Users can click the button or press the Windows key plus C to open it. The sidebar slides out from the right side of the screen. June 2024. Microsoft changes Copilot from a sidebar to a standalone floating application pinned to the taskbar. The change was framed as a response to user feedback, asking for more flexibility in resizing and moving the window. Microsoft also ships a physical Copilot key on new Windows 11 keyboard hardware, dedicated to opening the assistant. Late 2024 through early 2025, Microsoft adds Copilot buttons across Windows applications. Notepad, the snipping tool, the Photos app, File Explorer, the Widgets panel, the Settings menu, and the right-click context menu all receive Copilot integration. The user backlash intensifies. The term Microsoft appears and spreads. January 2026. Multiple emergency Windows updates fail, causing widespread system crashes. Users connect the failures to AI-generated code. Satya Nadella acknowledges publicly that 20 to 30% of code in Microsoft's repositories is now written by AI. The combination of broken updates and aggressive AI integration produces peak Microsoft sentiment. Microsoft bans the word from its official Copilot Discord server. March 20th, 2026. Pavan Davuluri publishes the Commitment to Windows Quality blog post. Microsoft promises to reduce Copilot entry points. Copilot buttons are removed from the snipping tool and Photos app. The Copilot logo in Notepad is replaced with a pen icon labeled Writing Tools. The Tech Press declares a Copilot retreat. April 2026. Microsoft adds the Remove Microsoft Copilot App Group policy setting, giving IT administrators an official way to uninstall Copilot from managed devices. This is the first time Microsoft has provided a supported, clean uninstall path for Copilot. It is welcomed by enterprise IT teams as long overdue. May 2026. Microsoft begins rolling out the docked Copilot sidebar, which can be pinned to either edge of the desktop and forces all open windows to resize around it. The feature echoes the original 2024 sidebar design that users previously rejected. At the same time, Microsoft confirms that Ask Copilot, the feature that replaces the taskbar search box with a Copilot chat interface, is scheduled for mid-2026 launch. June 2026. We are here. Ask Copilot's mid-2026 deadline is now imminent. The docked sidebar is rolling out through phased Windows Update. Copilot's Copilot marketing chief, Yusuf Mehdi, has announced he is staying through the next fiscal year specifically to oversee what he calls bringing the One Copilot vision to life and preparing Windows for the agentic era. The term agentic refers to AI that does not just respond to prompts, but takes actions on your behalf, running multi-step tasks across multiple applications autonomously. That is where this is going. Ask Copilot. In the taskbar is not the destination, it is the entry point. The destination is an AI that sits inside Windows at the shell level, that watches what you're working on, that proactively suggests actions, that can reach across Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and Outlook simultaneously to complete a task you describe in natural language. An AI that Microsoft describes as bringing AI agents directly into the taskbar and start menu. Agents, not a chat box, not a search replacement. Agents, software that acts. That vision, which Microsoft is building toward and which the taskbar integration is the first visible piece of at consumer scale, requires the AI to have extraordinary access to what you are doing on your computer, what files you have open, what emails you are writing, what documents you are working on, what meetings you have scheduled, what tasks are pending. To act on your behalf, the agent needs to know what you are doing. And to know what you are doing, it needs to be embedded at the level where all of that information lives, which is the operating system itself, which is exactly where Microsoft is putting it. The taskbar integration is not a feature, it is a foundation. Microsoft is building the infrastructure for an AI that lives inside Windows at the deepest possible level, and Ask Copilot is the interface through which that infrastructure becomes visible and normalized. Once the taskbar has a Copilot chat box in it, and once users begin using it, even occasionally, the pattern of behavior that Microsoft needs to develop the agentic capabilities begins to accumulate. The prompts teach the system. The interactions reveal the workflows. The telemetry informs the roadmap. The foundation builds itself through use. What you do with all of this is your decision. Microsoft has, after genuine pressure, added a meaningful uninstall path for Copilot. The April 2026 group policy setting removes Copilot from enterprise machines cleanly. For individual users, the Settings app now includes a direct option to uninstall the Copilot application. For Ask Copilot on the taskbar, Microsoft has stated the feature will be optional and not enabled by default at launch, at least in the initial enterprise rollout. Whether optional remains true when it reaches consumer Windows 11 across 1 billion devices is a question that the history of every previous Copilot default suggests you should watch carefully. The docked sidebar is already on your machine if you have received the May 2026 phased update. To prevent it from activating, open Copilot, find the docking option in the title bar dropdown, and ensure it is set to standard app view rather than any docked mode. If you receive the sidebar in a docked state through an automatic update, go to Taskbar settings in Windows 11 settings, find Copilot, and turn the toggle off. For Ask Copilot when it arrives. If it arrives as optional, you will see an option to enable it when you click the Taskbar search box. Do not enable it without understanding what you are connecting. If it arrives as enabled by default, go into Settings, then Personalization, then Taskbar, and look for the Ask Copilot or Search option. Set it to Windows Search only, not Copilot. But here is the larger point, and this is the one that I want you to carry with you after this video is over. Microsoft is not doing any of this because it does not care about your experience. The Davuluri blog post was genuine. The removal of Copilot from Notepad and the snipping tool was genuine. The group policy uninstall path was genuine. Microsoft understands that it pushed too hard and it is making real adjustments. But none of those adjustments change the direction. They change the speed and the method. The direction is this. Microsoft has decided that the future of Windows is an operating system that is inseparable from AI, not an operating system that offers AI as an optional add-on. An operating system where AI is the shell, where Copilot is not an application running on Windows, but a layer of Windows itself, embedded at the taskbar level, embedded in the file system, embedded in the applications, embedded in the way you search and find and create and communicate. That is the agentic era that Yusuf Mehdi is staying to build. That is the one Copilot vision he described before the announcement of his departure from the marketing role. And the reason this matters is not that AI is inherently bad or that Microsoft's intentions are malicious. The reason it matters is that the taskbar is yours, the search box is yours, the files on your hard drive are yours, the emails you write are yours, the documents you create are yours, and when the operating system that manages all of those things embeds an AI that processes them, summarizes them, and uses them to improve Microsoft products, the line between your computer and Microsoft's data infrastructure becomes thinner than it has ever been. The taskbar has been yours for 30 years. Watch what happens to it in the next 6 months. Because the changes coming are not a feature update. They are a redefinition of who the operating system is for. Right now, today, before Ask Copilot arrives in its mid-2026 launch window, you have the cleanest possible picture of what is being built. You know what is coming, you know what it will ask access to, you know the data it will generate and where that data goes, and you know that optional at launch has historically been a temporary status for Microsoft AI features, not a permanent one. Use that knowledge now, set your defaults before the defaults are set for you. Turn off what you do not need before it becomes difficult to find the toggle, and watch the taskbar. Because that strip of screen at the bottom of your computer is about to become the front door to something much larger than a search box. Microsoft built the taskbar to help you get to your stuff. What it is building now uses your stuff to get to you. Let me take you one level deeper because there's a specific detail about the K2 initiative and the agentic strategy that the headlines have not fully connected yet. And when you connect them, the contradiction between removing Copilot from Notepad and embedding it in the taskbar stops looking like a contradiction and starts looking like a deliberate design decision. The K2 initiative is Microsoft's internal code name for the Windows Quality Rehabilitation Project that Davuluri's March blog post publicly announced. K2 is not just about removing buttons. According to reporting from Windows Central, K2 is about replacing scattered intrusive Copilot entry points with a single, deeply integrated Copilot presence. The strategy is described internally as moving from Copilot everywhere to Copilot as ambient. The distinction matters enormously, and it is worth sitting with. Copilot everywhere meant buttons in every application. It meant the Copilot logo in the corner of Notepad. It meant the Ask Copilot option in the right-click menu of File Explorer. It meant a dedicated taskbar button and a physical keyboard key. This approach failed because it made Copilot feel like a salesperson standing at every door in the building, constantly offering to help with things you were already handling. Users resented it not because AI is worthless, but because the omnipresence communicated something uncomfortable. It said that Microsoft wanted Copilot in your workflow even when you had not asked for it. And the way users interpreted that correctly is that Microsoft needed Copilot to be in your workflow. Because the business model that justifies $13 billion in OpenAI investment and $150 billion in annual AI capital expenditure requires that users actually use the AI. Copilot as ambient is different. The idea behind K2 is that instead of appearing everywhere as a button, Copilot appears nowhere as a button and everywhere as a capability. You should not see a Copilot logo in Notepad. But when you open Notepad, Copilot should already know the context of what you are writing and be able to respond if you choose to engage. You should not see a Copilot button in File Explorer. But when you search for a file Copilot's understanding of your work patterns should already be influencing what appears in the results. You should not have a Copilot taskbar button that you can ignore. You should have a search box that is Copilot, so that every time you use search, which is every time you want to find anything on your computer, you are using Copilot. This is the K2 vision. And it is a significantly more sophisticated and significantly more consequential approach than Copilot everywhere was. Buttons can be removed, buttons can be ignored. Ambient intelligence woven into the search box, the taskbar, and the file system cannot be ignored in the same way because it is not visible in the same way. It is just there, in the background, part of how things work. The same way the spell checker in Word is just there. The same way autocomplete in a search bar is just there, not a feature you chose, a behavior of the tool you're using. And this is where the privacy question becomes more precise and more urgent than the press coverage has captured. Because when Copilot is ambient, when it is woven into the shell of the operating system rather than appearing as a separate application, the data it collects is no longer the data generated by intentional Copilot interactions. It is the data generated by using Windows itself. Here is what that means in practice. Right now, when you open the Copilot app and type a prompt, you're making a deliberate choice. You know you're talking to an AI. You know the interaction is being processed. You can choose not to open the app. The data generated is the data of explicit use. When Ask Copilot replaces the taskbar search box, every search you perform on your own computer is a Copilot interaction. You're not thinking about talking to an AI. You're looking for a file. You're launching an application. You're typing the name of something you need. But the interface processing that search is Copilot. The context that search generates, what files you have, what applications you use, what you were looking for and when, is Copilot data. The distinction between using Windows and using Copilot disappears. They are the same thing. Windows Central's coverage of Ask Copilot described Microsoft's product framing for the feature in language that makes this explicit. Microsoft describes the integration as AI that feels like a natural part of Windows. When something feels like a natural part of Windows, users stop thinking of it as a separate product with its own data relationship. They think of it as Windows, and Windows is the thing they trust because they paid for it, and it is on their computer. That trust is what Microsoft is building toward. Not trust in Copilot as an AI product, which the adoption numbers have shown is in short supply. Trust in Windows as the reliable operating system that people have been using for 30 years. Microsoft is wrapping Copilot in the credibility of Windows itself, making it feel like a natural part of a thing people already trust. And the taskbar is the most powerful place to do that, because the taskbar is the piece of Windows that users interact with more than any other. It is the first thing you see when Windows loads. It is the interface element you return to between every task you perform. It is, in the most literal sense, the center of the Windows experience. Embedding Copilot in the taskbar is not a product decision. It is a trust transfer. Microsoft is moving Copilot from the position of an AI assistant that you have to choose to engage with, which users have demonstrated they will not choose at the required scale, to the position of a natural part of the operating system that you engage with every time you do anything on your computer. And Microsoft's own data tells you exactly how the company is thinking about this. From their internal productivity survey, 34% of Windows users engaged with Copilot at least once per month in 2025. Copilot's paid subscriber market share fell from 18.8% to 11.5% in just 6 months. When given a real choice between Copilot, ChatGPT, and Gemini, only 8% of enterprise users prefer Copilot. The product, on its own merits, is not winning the market. And when a product is not winning the market on its own merits, but the company behind it has $13 billion invested in the underlying technology and $150 billion committed annually in AI infrastructure, that company does not give up on the product. It changes the market. The way you change the market when voluntary adoption fails is by making the product something people use without choosing to use it. You remove the choice, not through force, which would be legally and reputationally catastrophic, through integration, through ambience, through making the product so thoroughly part of the experience of using Windows that distinguishing between using Windows and using Copilot becomes meaningless. That is what the taskbar integration is. That is what the docked sidebar is. That is what the K2 initiative is building toward underneath its language about reducing clutter and improving quality. The clutter is being removed. The capability is being deepened and moved to a position where it cannot be avoided through inattention. You have been told Copilot is retreating. Look at where it is going. It is not retreating from Windows. It is retreating to the center of Windows. And the center of Windows is where your taskbar has always been. Watch for the mid-2026 update. When it arrives, you will see a change to the search box you have used for years. The change will look small. It will be framed as optional. It will probably, at least initially, be optional. But the infrastructure underneath it, the data flows, the AI processing, the ambient context collection that begins the moment search becomes Copilot, that infrastructure will be there whether you use the feature or not. The taskbar just crossed a line. And the question now is not whether Microsoft is building what I have described, because the documentation, the insider builds, the confirmed mid-2026 launch window, and the internal strategic documents all say that it is. The question is whether you will notice before the default changes around you. Decades of habits say you will type in that box without thinking about it. Microsoft is counting on exactly that.